Good evening and welcome to City Council's Education, Youth, and Family Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, September the 9th. I'm Michelle Harley, Committee Chair, and I represent the 4th Councilmatic District. I'm going to ask my council colleagues to introduce themselves before we get started.
Good evening. This is Hanifa Shabazz, President of City Council.
Hi, this is Linda Gray, First District Councilman.
Good evening. This is Yolanda McCoy, 6th District Councilwoman.
Thank you, council members. We have two presentations on our agenda on tonight. And before we get started, I want to thank both of our superintendents from Christina and Red Clay School Districts for accepting our invitation. As we all know, there is a lot of information going around and there's a lot going on as it relates to our children going back to school. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to have both of our superintendents to come and share information with us and with the community, and of course with families, so we can all have an idea as to what to expect this coming school year. So again, thank you, superintendents, for joining us. And I'm going to ask Dr. Dan Shelton from Christina to kick it off.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. And we have some slides that I'm going to speak from.
Okay.
There we go. Excellent. And should I just say next slide when I'm ready? Is that going to be the process?
Sure, that'll work.
All right.
Great.
So again, my name is Dan Shelton. I'm the superintendent in the Christina School District, and started on July 1. July 1 was an interesting time to start, as I had been working in my previous school district for about 4 months on planning for the reopening of school, but started in July 1 here in Christina. So the slides I'm using this evening are the slides that I used to update our board last evening, and gives you a pretty good overview of where we are and how we got here. And today being the second day with students. So next slide, please. So I guess critically important is sort of the timeline. So while there was a great deal of discussion and talk last year, a lot of our planning efforts hinged on some work that was being done at the state level with Department of Public Health. And these are some of the key dates that were out there. This was obviously my primary concern when I started July 1. They had just gotten a couple of working groups up and running in Christina when I came on board. And we began in earnest planning as we had a short time before students would return. Our working groups followed the same 3 working groups that the state had done, which was academics and equity, health and wellness, and operations. So you can see here, and I won't go through all the dates, but it was a very fast timeline to try to get ourselves ready. We had made the decision to wait until after Labor Day to begin with students, which would give us an extra week of professional development. That was critical to our planning because we had to make sure, let's be really straight. At the end of last year, we were not providing the best services to our students, and we needed to make sure we do better. When last year, when COVID hit, we literally within 3 or 4 days went from, we might have to do something to we're closed, figure it out. But at that point in time, they said, but in 2 weeks we'll reopen. So in that point in time, most of us are operating on, well, we have time to catch back up. But when 2 weeks went to 4 weeks and 4 weeks went to 8 weeks, it became obvious that we were going to have to do something, and everybody just worked their way through it as best they could. This year, we wanted to make sure that we were providing really substantial opportunities for all of our students. We wanted to make sure that we were providing equity. Christina was not a one-to-one district. In other words, there was not a device for every child in Christina. There wasn't even a device for half of the children in Christina. They were all sharing devices. Through our referendum, that was one of our initiatives, was to become a one-to-one district. But at the time, when COVID hit, and even to today, we are not there yet. I'll speak more to that in a minute. So that became a big problem to make sure that there was equitable access to instruction. And therefore, last year, Christina relied heavily on packets rather than technology. Through our planning this summer, it was our hope to be able to do a really robust infusion of technology into our system. That is still our plan as we move forward. And as I'll speak in a moment, it is also our biggest obstacle currently to success in our operating our plan. So yesterday, we had our first day of school. We had some really positive things that came out of that, and we had some struggles, and I'll speak to those in a minute as well. It is our hope that we will be opening back up for in-person learning on October 9th. It is not our belief that we will be able to open full-time, but we have some other options and programs that I'll speak on in just a minute. Next slide, please. So our successes.
I have one question before we get too far. So you mentioned that you did not have enough laptops for all of the children. So do all of the children have laptops right now?
They do not. I will get to that in the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Matter of fact, I was going to talk about it in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
So, so the biggest successes were our professional development. We were very cognizant that our teachers were going to need additional professional development in order to be successful in a remote environment. And we were able to partner with some really key people in the industry, specifically Modern Teacher, who provides to the Brink Consortium, which Brandywine School District, Red Clay School District, Colonial School District are all part of. Christina is not yet a part of. However, Capital was where I was previously, so I was very familiar with the program. So we began that work of infusing some of those, some of that information to our teachers here in Christina who had not yet been exposed to it. We also had not yet adopted a learning management system. And last year there was some different schools were using different management systems. So we adopted Schoology officially as a district, which allows us to provide a consistent environment for our students. For video conferencing, again, there's multiple options out there, but as a district, we adopted Zoom. Schoology has a built-in platform, which we can use as a backup. However, our teachers and staff believe that Zoom had a more robust feature set, and it's really easy to embed those links into Schoology. So that is our method of choice, which obviously the method of the city of Wilmington as well, is that's what we're using tonight as well.
Okay.
There was a big concern with our HVAC and air circulation. There had been a history of potential issues with that. So we've partnered with 4 different control agencies and engineering firms to do evaluations of every one of our buildings to make sure that we had the correct amount of air, the correct filtration, and that we are providing a safe environment as far as air circulation goes. And I'll talk a little more about that in a minute, but that was a big win for us, being able to get all those people in and really looking at our systems. And our nurses have been extremely engaged in this process, and our preparations and making sure that we had the correct PPE, the protective gear, as well as isolation rooms and specialized filtration to make sure that those areas are safe. And just processes and protocols to put in place. That's been a real win for us is the engagement of our nurses.
Okay.
Areas of opportunity, areas that we still have work to do. Chromebooks and or iPads for all of our students. To date, we do not have enough in stock for every student. There are some schools that still have some in place, but that is not because we are overrun with devices. It is because we haven't had students coming in to pick them up and or they haven't been delivered yet. We will be short. We have had over 7,000 devices on order, and they've been on order. Unfortunately, there's a national shortage right now on devices. Our order was probably one of the largest in the state. It might have been the largest in the state. As we were not a one-to-one district, we did not have devices in hand prior to the pandemic. We had to order to get us there. Internet is also a opportunity for us. We had great news today, and that is we had a delivery of 500 hotspots, which we will begin to prioritize and disseminate to those that are unable to connect through some of our broadband providers. I have to say that we have had some great partnerships with some of our providers, particularly Comcast, T-Mobile, are offering really reduced prices and really beefing up their service for those people that are on those plans. It's been a big win for everyone. And a lot of our families were able to take advantage of that and get not just internet for their students, but internet in their homes at a very reduced cost. And Comcast really upped their speeds to make that good for our families.
Great.
Another area that we're focused in is family connections. We have not yet had two-way communication with every one of our families. And what I mean by that is, you know, we can say, oh, we've contacted every family because we sent out an email or we did a mailing. But until we hear back from them, we can't guarantee that that message went through. That's a huge thing that we are very focused on. We want to make sure that we make a connection with every single one of our families, that we know they have the information. There is a tech survey, for example, and it's not a long survey and it can be done over the phone while I'm talking to you, but just simple things. Do you have a computer in your home for every one of your children? Do you have an internet connection that's reliable? You know, are you going to be able to participate during the day when we have synchronous learning? These are important factors so that we can make sure we have supports in place for all of our families. So that is a focus of ours right now, to make sure we make two-way communication with each one of our families.
When did you start reaching out to the families to confirm?
So the initial reach out was over the summer, which was not telephone calls and things like that. That was when we started pushing out some of our electronic surveys, some of our phone calls that had the ability to respond back to, just to try to get a sense of where families were. And that was our initial planning. A lot of that was based on that, but we knew we didn't get a hold of everybody and we weren't getting high response rates. We were actually getting much higher response rates than I would have thought we would get for those kind of communication, but we weren't getting, obviously nobody gets 100% on any survey, but we were not getting above 50%, which is actually really good for a survey, but not what we need for final understanding of where our families are. Once we had teachers back.
Yeah, well, especially if you were relying on the survey to identify if there were needs for, you know, your Chromebooks.
Yeah, which we weren't, because actually, if you were answering the survey, your need wasn't as high as somebody that couldn't answer the survey. So that's why once our teachers got back, we were then able to start with our phone calls. We were then able to start with that direct communication to the families, that one-to-one connection. That's what's ongoing, trying to make sure that every single family has been connected with.
What's the percentage now?
So I don't know where we are exactly right now. We were roughly 80 to 90%, depending on the school. So it was high, but until we get to every child, we're not going to be there yet.
No, the reason I asked that question was because depending on the questions that are in the survey, how critical was it that you made that connection as it relates to their homework packages? I mean, of course, I don't know what's in the survey, but What was the connection with the survey versus the needs of the child?
So the one-to-one connection is when I call it a survey, because there's 3 questions we're asking every teacher to ask their families to make sure we have that information specific around devices and internet. But those are really just conversations, right?
Mhm.
Hey, I'm going to be your child's teacher this year. Are you going to be able to be on? Here's what I'm thinking about doing. It's more of the one-to-one connection is really to bring and foster that sense of community. Excuse me. Historically, we do back to school events, right? Where families come in and they get to meet their teacher. That's obviously not something we can do in COVID. So this is in replace of that. As far as planning purposes go, we were using the original this summer data to then extrapolate, because we knew if you're able to answer an online survey, you had internet in some way, shape, or form. You're not the majority, and or you're certainly not going to be representative of those that didn't answer. It just gave us a sense of where we were. And quite frankly, there's a larger number of people that are able to connect through email and things that they can do on their phone, but there's a much larger percentage of people that are able to do that, but are unable to do things that you would have to type and things that would really be schoolwork. So that's why that was critically important. And again, our goal is not to have enough devices just for students that do not have them in their home. Our goal is to have one-to-one. The devices just aren't in stock yet, and we're hoping to get them soon. We're working tirelessly to make sure that we connect with our vendors. So the last one, which I think is getting to a lot of your points, and quite frankly, rightfully so, which is around equity, right? So we know that there is a digital divide, and we know that this pandemic has done nothing but really put a spotlight on that digital divide. And because of that digital divide has really put a spotlight on how we can and I guess how fragile our ability to provide equity to our families can be when we are put in situations where we can't operate as we normally do. Simple example, students that are at Bancroft or at Bayard or at Stubbs, we have tremendous supports. We have extra staffing available in those buildings. But when it comes to being virtually, if you're not able to connect and you don't have the ability to be in some synchronous programming, then you're not able to take advantage of that stuff. And while having those extra services and supports means potentially we have more ability to get to the home, it doesn't mean that we're going to have that connection and form those relationships that we need for our students to be successful. So equity has been a primary focus of the summer, is how to ensure that our programs are going to be equitable. And it is an area that we have not yet met, and we know we haven't met, and we're continuing to work on that. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes, Council.
My hand's been up for some time.
Oh, I was trying to figure out where do I look for the hands? Is it in the chat or participants?
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Shelton.
I'm sorry, but I can barely hear you.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to use my phone as well.
That's better.
Okay, Mr. Shelton. Okay, thank you. I don't know whether or not I actually caught where the hotspots, where you were actually receiving them from, and are they free to the families?
So we purchased them. We actually went through so many different vendors. I don't know who finally we landed on because we were desperate to get them. At whatever vendor would be able to get them to us first. And they will be available to families. They will not be charged.
Okay. Madam Chair, I had a follow-up.
Yes.
So the other question is, because I do realize that you are trying very hard to have, when it comes to technology, one-to-one, making certain that you have, Chromebook, laptop, or iPad for every child. Until, I'm not certain when you believe you'll get to that point, but until you do, are you giving families the opportunity to opt out if they already have something already at home that the child can work on, or something to that nature, or even if the parents feel as though, I can get access to one, are they able to use their one from home and still make certain that they access everything that is available, like from the schools?
Yeah, so absolutely. Any device can get to the work that we're doing. That's a good thing, but it also is part of the issue, right? Because that's what causes the digital divide. So yeah, if you had a computer that, was from work, or you had purchased it, or, you have an iPad, or you have a Chromebook, or you have a PC, it doesn't matter what device. If you have availability, then that gives you an advantage over someone that doesn't have that ability. But absolutely, any device will connect to what we're doing. Almost any device, I don't want to say any device, almost any device will connect to the work that we're doing. Zoom is a pretty common platform. Schoology is a very common platform and available if you have an internet connection. Let me add one more piece to that, though. And that is, in addition to just the digital divide, the other issue with our remote learning, which I guess I should have touched on, is the home environment, right? So do you have a parent that's going to be home? Or are you going to be with grandma? Or are you going to be at a daycare center? So that the environment in which you will be during the school day, school-aged children are not usually in those environments. They're usually in school. So that also is another divide. I'm sure someone has come up with a catchy phrase for that. But so we have a digital divide, but we also have a home environment that's going to cause a potential difference and inequity amongst our families. So we are also trying to establish learning pods with a number of partners. United Way has been a fantastic partner with us. And in the city, we have a number of different groups that have formed pods, and many of them still have spaces available. That information we're trying to get out to our families so that if you don't have those opportunities in your own home, you can go where they have a device, where they have internet, where they have someone who can work with the child. They're popping up all over the place, and we're trying right now to find a partner. We thought we had a partner. Unfortunately, the partner backed out yesterday to provide some of those services within our buildings, following COVID precautions, obviously. Excuse me. So we're searching right now for a new partner to be able to do that in our 3 city buildings.
Okay.
And part of that has to do with it's not just our students who are having to deal with learning environment in their home, but our teachers as well, because many of our teachers have kids, and if they're teaching, they can't be helping their students with their own learning. So we also need to make sure we're providing services, especially when we move back to the hybrid model, where sometimes the student will be in school and sometimes the student will not be in school, but our teachers are going to be in school. So we have to make sure that we have something for their children as well, because they're working and they need to have their children to have ability to continue with their learning.
Actually, I have one more follow-up question. Just because we're on day 2, my child has started back to school as well. Because we're on day 2, and these children actually do not have access to, maybe they may not have access to technology, are they being considered absent, or have we gotten in touch with any of the parents? Like where are we with making certain that we've identified at least that these children are still enrolled?
So that was one of the things I led with, was these family connections are critically important. So actually, I don't remember if it's in a slide or not. I'll just go through my slides later because I'm addressing most of them through the questions.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to be clear about whether or not.
Okay.
I did hear what you said. I just wanted to be clear. I just wanted to find out whether or not, if that connection hasn't been made yet, are we still considering these children as absent?
Right. So at this time in the year, honestly, we were worried. I shouldn't say we didn't expect. We were worried about participation and attendance. And most of our buildings were pleasantly surprised with the level of engagement we've had already. I didn't get a number today, but as of yesterday, we have roughly a little over 13,000 students. And we had roughly 10,000 students on Schoology yesterday, individual students on Schoology. For the first day of school in a regular school year, I'm not sure our attendance is that good. So during this point in the year, we're often really trying to connect with families to see, are you still in our district? You're double counted right now because you've moved and now you're in Brandywine or Red Clay instead of Christina. We have a lot of movement over the summer, and during this time of the year, we spend a lot of time actually trying to find kids. So this is kind of normal for us. However, it's not a normal environment. So we were pleasantly surprised with the engagement we had the first day. Again, I didn't get a number from today. But we are actively pursuing those that are not on and have been. By the way, some people we connected to may not have gotten on, so now we need to connect and find out why.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Next slide, please.
Well, hold on. Councilmember Gray, she has a question. How many more slides do we have?
There's quite a few. I'll skip quickly. I'm not sure how much time you before we need to turn it over to Dorrell. I'm getting to a lot of it through the questions, but there's quite a few slides left.
Oh, okay. So, well, let me just allow Councilmember Gray to at least ask her question. And I think what we'll do is go through the slides and then ask the questions afterwards. And let's try to write them down because, like you said, Dorrell is prepared to, I think, do his presentation at least by 5:30.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My
Yes.
question is, sorry, Mr. Shelton. Do you know how many families in your of your students don't have connectivity? Do you have any idea of that?
It was, we had roughly, I wish I had the number exactly. The number with connectivity was higher than the number with devices. I don't have the number off the top of my head though now.
But is that what the hotspots were for people that didn't have connectivity?
For people that don't have connectivity, but also aren't able to get it through some of the other providers.
Okay.
So if we're able to get them connected through Comcast or through T-Mobile or one of these other providers, that's a much better connection. It's a stronger connection. But there are some people through their situations, potentially through previous work with those companies, are not able to get reconnected. Those are the ones that we want to make sure we can connect.
And you're connecting by hotspot for those people.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
So we'll skip this one. Next slide. If I only have 2 minutes, I got to move. This is just talking about that we, some of the things that I've already talked about. We can go ahead, next slide. We do have a new attendance policy to get to someone who's asking about attendance. So during this time of the year, we always sort of have attendance issues. There are some new codes that we're using, specifically allowing for students who may not be able to participate in person, potentially on like a Zoom like this, but are able to that evening log in, complete the work. We have all of our classes are being recorded and posted so that students can take advantage of those from home later. So mom and dad are working, I'm at grandmom. I'm not going to do class from 9 to 2. I'm going to do class from 3 to 8 at night. Families are able to do that. And they would get credit for attending by turning in their work. Next slide, please. So this is what I really wanted to concentrate on tonight, is our virtual academy. So there's been a lot of misunderstanding around this. So I wanted to clarify that among some of our leaders so they can help spread the word. The Christina Virtual Academy is not our distance learning, and it is not our remote learning. The Virtual Academy is a separate program. It is an optional program. It is a service we are providing for families that we know are out there because they've been talking to us and said, look, I don't care what the governor says. I don't care what DPH says. My kid's not coming back to school this year. I'm keeping them home. We wanted to meet that need head on, and that's the Virtual Academy. The Virtual Academy is an option for families to register. And in the Virtual Academy, they will be in virtual learning for the entire school year. We are going to set up our services and supports. We're going to have certified teachers. We're going to make sure our lessons are engaging. It will be set up for virtual for the year. It is an option if for those families that do not wish to attend in person. As a state, we had over 1,200 families register for homeschools since August. There are a lot of families that do not want their children coming back to the traditional setting. The virtual academy is for them. For those that now are prepared to work in a remote environment, but would like to work in a hybrid environment and come back to school when it's safe, staying within our current system, in our current remote learning with their current teacher, and then we'll work through the system as the health concerns and our preparations are all put into place. It is our hope to begin our hybrid model on October the 19th. Next slide, please.
I'm just curious to know, did you have to add more to your staff with all these different options of learning?
So this model that is in front of you may help to answer that question.
Okay.
So right now we're in remote learning. Everyone is in remote learning, and we are setting up the virtual academy. We had over 1,000 students register for the virtual academy in the first 72 hours. It was very popular. When we move to hybrid and some of our students come in, we will not be hiring new staff. We will be taking our existing staff and moving some of them to support the virtual academy and some of them to support the hybrid learning based on the number of students that select those options. So it looks like we will be able to have a solid set of cohorts of students in the virtual academy. So first graders will stay together and second graders will stay together and high schoolers will stay together. We'll be able to provide some supports. We are not certain yet. We will be able to provide some of our unique programs like Chinese immersion, some of our more unique high school programs we may not be able to offer in the virtual academy, but it's our hope to be able to provide most of our services and supports through the virtual academy. And then the rest of our students will transition through the hybrid model, which is some at home, some in person, and hopefully eventually return to school full time. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Next slide, please. There is, next slide, please. There is a town hall scheduled. It's tomorrow night. This is the information. It's also available on our website where we'll be answering questions. And we have posted a Q&A. We've received probably 50 to 100 questions about our virtual academy. And those have all been answered and are currently posted on our website as well. Next slide, please. I just want to hit two more really quick. I feel like I'm encroaching on Dorrell's time. Next slide, please. So I've talked a lot about nutrition. I want to talk about, about technology. I want to talk a little about nutrition. Last year, we did walk-up sites at the schools. This year, we will be delivering into neighborhoods for our meal delivery. It has not started yet. Right now, we're still doing curbside. However, there will be meal distribution. We just found out last week that the USDA was going to continue the summer feeding program, which is a free program. So we will be delivering meals into the community, and those that receive them will not be paying for them. So that is a big expansion on our meal program from last year. Next slide, please.
Well, I do need to ask a question. So when you said that y'all will be delivering them, when you say you will, who and how?
Our child nutrition services will be preparing the meals, and they will be on our buses and our vans, delivering them into the community by our nutrition workers. We're using our staff to do the delivery and the preparation.
So is it
And
going
we'll
to
be
be
using the USDA, so the federal government's is paying for the meals.
Yeah. So is it going to be like a central place, or you going door to door? What does that look
It
like?
won't be door to door, but it'll be community based. So we won't stop at every single household, but we'll stop in general areas, and it's going to be published. We're working the details. There was a draft actually that was published. I believe it's on our website, but we'll have much more communication once everything's finalized.
Got you.
Like I said, we didn't know, we had a whole plan for how we were going to deliver meals and have the kids use their numbers like they would normally use, because that's what we were told we were going to have to do. And then last week, the USDA said, oh, never mind, you can do it for free, continue it. So we had to restart the entire plan, and we're pushing that out soon.
Okay, thanks.
What we found, if nothing else, what we've learned in COVID is that the information you have today is not going to be the information you have tomorrow. And then cleaning, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we are really proud of the fact that we have come up with great protocols for cleaning and great protocols to make sure our air quality is there. Next slide, please. Keep going. Keep going. Next slide. I think it's the next one. This is the other one I wanted to hit. Our Health and Wellness Committee is probably our most robust committee, and is also probably broken into the most subgroups. These were all of the things that we had hoped to accomplish prior to opening, and you can see a whole lot of check boxes here. We have done the lion's share of the work for reopening. You can see a few of the areas that we are still working on. And if you go to the next slide, it'll give you much more specifics. This is the areas that we are still working on. Our signage is supposed to be here in the next couple of weeks, which is critically important to have around our buildings. Our isolation rooms, there's a shortage of plexiglass, believe it or not, in the nation right now. And so our partitions that we've ordered, we are expecting by September 23rd. And we have face coverings that we actually were delivered yesterday. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, testing. We came into agreements with our teachers union and our paraprofessional union to have universal testing of all staff. So currently all of our staff are being tested for COVID through the state. I won't go through that whole process.
Okay.
We are also working with DPH, the county and the state, to have testing sites for all of our students. The plan is to use Glasgow High School, Kirk Middle School, and Drew, where I am right now, on October 8th, 9th, and 12th, respectively. And we will, DEMA, in collaboration with Newcastle County and the Christina School District, will be providing all families the ability to test prior to returning to school. So that is the biggest of my highlights. Again, I think I answered a lot of questions, which kind of hit most of my slides. But I'm happy to answer more questions after Dorrell gets his presentation in.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for what you have shared thus far. And before I turn it over to Dorrell, I do want to acknowledge Council Member Sam Guy, and I see he had his hand up. So, Councilman, would you like to ask your question real quick?
I have a comment on the digital divide that might turn into a question. But what I want the gentleman to be aware of is that it's a shame that you're facing a digital divide issue, because actually, like, local governments can help you with that. Because here in Wilmington, we once had an internet access program for all city employees. So historically, the children of Wilmington employees had internet access over 20 years ago in their home. And I'm quite sure those children did well. We also had money in our capital budget for internet access program. And so as a city, we previously had that in our budget, either $100,000 or $200,000, because we wanted every child in Wilmington to have a computer and free internet access, which we were negotiating with Comcast. So we have funding where we could invest in helping to purchase computers as well. because we did it before. These are actually past budget items. We just never got to implement the purchase because we didn't have the internet access, dial-up back then. So I just say to you, we also had planned on having computer labs throughout the city. And so one computer lab we did do was in the South Bridge neighborhood house, which is over in your district. We had a brand new computer lab. So, you know, local governments can help, but I'm not sure that the school districts know how local governments can help. And I was involved with these kind of things because I was the education chair. So we were making hotspot. We wanted to make the whole city a hotspot. We were able to start off making Herman Holloway Park eventually the first hotspot, I believe. But our goal was for the whole city to have children in school with computers, internet access, the whole city a hotspot. And we did some of it, you know, through changes in who's elected. Once the person, which was me, was pushing this stuff, wasn't in office, then it all died. But our kids are on the wrong side of the digital divide, partly because of the school districts and partly because of the local government didn't do all that it could do to help our children be on the right side of the digital divide. So I just wanted to share that with you. The way it is now, it didn't have to be that way. Wilmington, you shouldn't even have a problem worrying about Wilmington kids having computers and internet access.
So I would, thank you, sir. I would like to just add to that. There has been no shortage of people offering money and services. Our issue has not been an issue of money in any way. It's an issue of actual devices availability. There's only 2 manufacturers in the world of the chips that are used in Chromebooks, and they are overrun with people putting in orders, so they're just not able to keep up with it. We've had tons of people offer us money to help with this. Money wasn't the issue. It was getting the devices in hand. Has been our issue. But I agree that those people that have, you know, I used work as an example. A lot of people do have access through their work. And when that happens, I 100% agree with you. Those students are able to be more successful when they have access and resources. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Councilmember Guy. Our next presenter is Mr. Dorrell Green. I'm going to turn it over to him, and he's going to share with us from Red Clay School District. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Councilwoman Harley, for extending the invite to join you this evening. And I will be somewhat brief. As Dr. Shelton alluded to, many of the same struggles that Christina is facing, I would say all of our districts, especially those who support children and families throughout the city of Wilmington, are also experiencing as well. So I will just allow for whomever is moderating to bring up the presentation, and I'll go through it and answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Well, I want you to not feel rushed, and you know, whatever you would like to make sure that you point out, please feel free to do that.
Will do.
WITN didn't receive a presentation from Red Clay, so I don't know if you have something to send us really quickly.
We sent it, I sent it to whoever the point of contact was that I know my office did, but either you can allow me to share my screen and I can pull it up, or I can send you the link. I can put it in the chat if that works. Whatever would be the easiest way. Otherwise, I can speak to it.
Sure. I would say go ahead and try to share your screen. I'll give you the access to do that now.
No, you'll probably be all right for a while. I'm not set up yet.
We need everyone to be on mute. Sorry, please.
It's not allowing me to share.
One moment, my apologies. We're trying to get the access for you.
I can send you the link if that's much easier.
You should be able to share your screen.
Yes, can you please send us the link?
One moment. Am I putting it in the chat for you to grab?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Hold on. Is there a particular one on the channel or everyone?
Yeah, you can just send to all panelists. Thank you. All right, give us a couple of minutes.
So as they work to pull it up, I can just speak to currently where we are as a district. We are also in day 2 of our remote learning process. Students started yesterday remotely. We were fortunate to use our CARES Act funding, anticipating the need around digital divides and the need for devices to pre-purchase, knowing again that there were supply chain issues and we'd be one of many districts across not only the state, but the nation looking for access to devices. So we pre-order a lot of our devices. We were already a 3 through 12th grade one-to-one model as a district. One of our learnings, thank you for bringing it up, through the spring was the fact that we weren't one-to-one K-2, and then ultimately families that had a need had to request a device from us in the spring. And so we went to a full one-to-one K-12, and we're also in the process of distributing iPads to our preschool programs as well for students who have developmental delays and may need assistive technology as it relates to their programming in terms of our early years program as well. And so the first slide, and you actually go to slide 3, just kind of talks about our 3-phase approach to reopening. Again, the state released its guidance in terms of recommendations for reopening, giving us 3 scenarios. I keep saying play scenario because I'm thinking about DIAA sports, which is also looming. Phase 1 of ours is remote, and we're looking at a 6-week window, similar to what Dr. Shelton alluded to really determine the families who want some semblance of an in-person process. We have issued a individual family-based questionnaire to each of our families at each school so that we can determine students at which grade level, again, at which school are looking or seeking for in-person opportunities versus those who want to remain in a remote environment. And so really using the state's gating criteria around the percent of persons positive, the number of new cases, and then hospitalizations, which ultimately determines our ability to bring students back in. Under the current guidance of the state, they're indicating that we can have in-person learning as a part of our reopening, but there are equity issues abound as it relates to who we determine to receive that in-person instruction, and then just the disruption that a hybrid model, when you have families looking for limited childcare opportunities to be 2 days in, 2 days out, a half day in, a half day out. And then ultimately when you have 28 schools, how do you keep families within a particular cohort, ensuring that if a student's in high school, are they able to remain at home with their siblings, and how do you balance that out? And then with all of our middle schools and high schools, being in the suburbs, transportation continues to provide an issue as it relates to social distancing when we have a 3-tier arrival and dismissal procedure. And that's when, you know, our schools are picked up for high school runs first. They turn around, they pick up the middle school runs, and then they turn around and pick up the elementary school runs. So on a traditional 48 passenger bus with social distancing, we're really only able to get approximately about 12 children on a particular run. And so there are 100+ runs that we would still have to collapse. And that poses some equity issues, again, when we have the majority of our actually all of our middle and high schools situated in our suburban geographic region within Red Clay. And so this phased approach really allows us to look at a remote start, again, ensuring that every student, every family has the technology and technological resources that they need, moving toward a hybrid, phased in reopening for in-person. And a big focus of us is our students with disabilities, understanding that this remote environment really is posing some challenges. We have over 20 satellite autism classrooms spread throughout our district. You know, those children have sensory issues where mask wearing presents some challenges. And so as we continue to look at the gating criteria, which is in a few slides, you'll see we have to adhere to what the state has kind of instituted in terms of a safe reopening.
Okay.
You can skip to slide 5. So this was just a general.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to say, it sounds like so far that you're, you know, what you're dealing with is pretty similar thus far with Christina.
I would say all 19 school districts across the state are dealing with similar aspects. I think the larger and more diverse your school is, the more challenging it will be based on where we currently find ourselves with the gating criteria. And again, when you look at % positive, because COVID isn't going anywhere, and I think the challenge before us and what I routinely communicate is we're trying to provide an educational response to a healthcare and economic crisis.
Right.
Knowing that as you reopen the economy, as we start to see, you know, restaurants and other venues open, children have to have somewhere to go, but yet the criteria by which we have to reopen schools isn't really allowing us to maximize that ability to do so. And so when we look at really trying to get the % positive rate of persons positive below 3%, and I believe as of today, we're at, the average is 4.5.
Right.
You know, seeing where the Labor Day spike may take us, you know, we continue, to Dr. Shelton's point, we've instituted testing for staff. Unfortunately, we have experienced positive cases. And so had children been in schools, you know, that would have been another impact that, you know, would have been disruptive to the in-person learning. But before you was a timeline that we had established. So we had back to school communication and letters that went out to families on the 18th. Families were asked to complete a safe to return school questionnaire, and we did get some data back. And right now as a district, it's about 60% have selected or would choose in person, and about 40% would choose continue with remote. And then when you break that down per school, you know, we have the percentages per school just in terms of where those response rates came from those specific family questionnaires. Teachers sent home information in their welcome back letter along with a Red Clay back to school toolkit. The starter kit was mailed and that had all of their information around Chromebook access, lunch numbers, all of the different information specific to that specific child and family was sent home. And between August 31st and the 4th, we had Chromebook distribution, with Baltz Elementary actually having to postpone theirs as a result of COVID to yesterday. So that were the last school to distribute their devices, and that took place yesterday. And so teachers are working virtually day 2, and you can go to the next slide. And so what's new this fall that was different? Again, Chromebooks for all students. We also increased our in-home support for internet access. We've partnered with Nerd It Now. We partnered with them over the spring and the summer. Markevis Gideon and Nerd It Now to provide ongoing tech support as they are, you know, immersed in the community as well. We enhanced our IT support. We've also provided for families who may have had difficulties accessing the internet through Comcast Essentials and others. One of the things that we did notice is in the spring, many of them may have started an application, didn't complete the application, and that presented some challenges through Comcast. And so we provided various hotspots. We did survey our families, and it was about 400 families that indicated that they had, Wi-Fi challenges. And so we worked directly with those families, and again, partnering with Nerded now to provide those supports along with our tech office. We offer more professional development with our staff, really looking at culturally responsive teaching, especially in light of the times we find ourselves in with the social injustices and civil unrest that we're experiencing and seeing throughout, whether that's playing out locally, regionally, or nationally, globally for that matter. Throughout the spring and summer, we served over 400,000 meals. And to Dr. Shelton's point, again, the USDA did provide us with additional relief through the federal waivers, where we can continue to do so. And we're also transitioning not to have the prepackaged cold meals. We will use our schools as meal distribution sites, as well as we had about 18 other community-based sites that we provided throughout the spring, and narrowed that down over the summer, but we will continue, again, to have meals and that support to our students and our families throughout the city.
Okay.
Next slide. And this is just a remote learning timeline. We knew, again, we fell woefully short. So grades pre-K to 5 classes meet Monday through Friday. And while the school day itself is 8:45 to 4:15, individualized schedules for students and families to mirror traditional school as best we can. We know that it is placing a hardship on a number of families. So we've partnered with some of our community-based agencies who are providing remote care. Hilltop Lutheran is one of the community centers, LACC, Boys and Girls Club, and YMCA are providing remote care opportunities for our students and families, in which we've partnered with. We're also having some conversations with some other community-based organizations, because we also know that our middle school and high schoolers need maybe safe places to go to get their work done, and purchase of care doesn't support 13 through 17-year-olds when we know that they're a vulnerable population. We see what's happening throughout the city currently with youth violence. So that is something that is on our minds, and so we're working with other community-based partners to look at, are there avenues to provide safe havens for teenagers who might not be covered under purchase of care, to maybe go during the day to get their work done. And then our secondary schools, middle and high schools, again, their school day is from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. is when they will participate in anywhere between 3.5 to 5 hours of synchronous, which is teacher-led instruction, or asynchronous, which are other learning opportunities that they have available to them through the various technology means. We also use Schoology as the learning management system that also hosts a host of key other platforms that can be used to support learning. Next slide. And again, this just talks about the phased reopening, again, using the data. We are also looking at our educators, many of who might be deemed at risk per COVID, to either seek the advice of their medical profession, pediatrician or their medical doctors, and or if they have underlying health conditions, that is actually going to go out on Friday to our staff, again, so that we can ensure that we have the capacity to meet the level of requests, both for in-person or for those who may need accommodations through ADA based on medical necessity, to continue to support remote learning. Next slide. And this is just the gating criteria. I think oftentimes folks will listen to the press conference, they'll hear the headlines and really think that the decision, while it may communicate that there are local decisions, are still kind of governed by the school reopening criteria that the state has established. And again, the 3 gating criteria are the new cases, % persons positive, and then the daily hospitalizations. And the only one that's currently in green, and actually I know hospitalization rates are continuing to increase or fluctuates, but those are the 3 gating criteria that we've been given by the state to ultimately determine. And for us, it's that % persons positive being below 3% is really the critical indicator to determine when it's safe to bring large numbers of students and staff back into our schools.
So
Next
you,
slide.
so you're saying 3%, not down to 1?
Well, ultimately, we want it to be 1, but just in terms of the risk of community spread. And that
Okay.
was, a marker from the CDC, and they're basically saying anything below 3%, you have limited community spread. When you have that infection rate or that percent positive for COVID below there, you have minimal community spread.
Understood. Thank you.
Next slide. Keep going. And so we distributed over 13,000 Chromebooks. Again, to all of our schools, each one had a distribution, a pickup. We continue to work with families. We also will have a tech bus that will be available to 5 different locations. That schedule, and I can provide just a link to our website where you can get that information, that will actually not only go out in the community as we support with meals and other needs, but understanding, again, a lot of our families don't have access when we talk about an equity issue, whether that would be a cracked screen, charging issues. So we will actually have tech support in a tech bus that will be out and about in the community at scheduled times to support the community and helping fix any issues that they may have with the devices that we've deployed.
Oh, when does that start?
It should be starting soon. Again, I will make sure you have a link to all of that information so that you can post it.
Yeah, it's just day 2. So
Yeah, and it'll be a rotation though.
yeah.
And so in addition to Chromebooks, we provided school supplies, the materials that they would generally need, paper, pencils, backpacks, at all of our elementary levels, textbooks, resources, also accompanied that material. Again, more consistent schedules around the learning environment, training. We partner with organization TNTP to really look at culturally responsive curriculum. One of the things I think a lot of folks have routinely made mistakes is trying to remediate the learning. And one of the things that we've been keen in researching, post Katrina, was accelerating learning, ensuring that our students and children, regardless of where they may be, are getting grade level appropriate material. And then using diagnostics and assessments to find the gaps to be able to support and put the interventions in place. Because if we put ourselves in the catch-up mode, we'll never catch them up because they'll always continue to lag behind. So a lot of what we're doing is providing, again, grade level specific content and material, understanding that there may be gaps in that learning, but it's easier to put the interventions in place than really trying to go back and reteach what students may have lost. And again, that's research-based best practices that we're employing. New health and safety protocols are in place for staff. Signage, PPE, all of those things are available, social distancing and such. We have been virtual with our board meetings. Next week's board meeting will be the first in-person board meeting that we will have held since school closure. And again, our mobile meal services will continue delivering the meals, and also school sites will also be providing those meals, and then enhance services and ongoing communication to help with our vulnerable populations. We do know, again, a lot of our families are dealing with the economic fallout, the disproportionate nature that COVID has had on the Black and Brown community, especially in our state. If you're Black, you're twice as likely to die from COVID than you are if you're white. And so understanding and knowing, again, we're trying to provide an educational response to a healthcare and economic crisis, being keen to what those needs are. So really working with United Way and 211. So we have many of our staff, as families call 211 in connection with 211 press 4, so that we have an understanding of what those needs are, so that we can readily meet and address those needs as a school system, understanding that many of the supports and services that are routinely provided through the physical nature of school may not necessarily be there, but we can still do our due diligence to meet that need as best we can in this remote learning environment.
Yeah, I just want to say that I really, really applaud you guys for what you're doing, because just listening to this, it sounds like to me that this is very challenging. And when I say that, meaning challenging with having to deal with trying to create an environment to teach and to make sure that our kids are getting the education that they need. So it's like, instead of you being in a position to focus on giving them the tools to learn, you have to first of all create a safe environment first. So it sounds like to me so far, that's what y'all have been preoccupied with doing.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't obviously, it's not ideal. You know, I think when schools closed March 13th, that Friday evening, you know, and I think the pushback, right, is that somehow we want schools closed. No, we want children in safe environments because we know that's ultimately what we provide. And when it's not safe, you know, even understanding again the disproportionate nature that COVID has on, you know, Black and brown children, just in terms of how the virus itself and the protein, you know, I mean, I've researched it ad nauseum just in terms of what does those supports actually mean. You know, a lot of our families don't have the ability to quarantine or self-isolate because we have multiple occupancy households or homes. So really focusing on, again, not just so much the education, but also the social determinants of health, how we can stand up as many of those supports as we can in this current environment is also a big part of our focus. And so you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, before we do, I'm going to call on council member.
And this is, I'll just answer all of your questions because this is this is my second to last slide. And it's
Okay.
a little difficult to read, but this was the back to school starter kit. It gave them all the information around, again, the calendar, important dates, specific information to their login, everything they may need with regards to digital learning. And then my last slide, again, we'd be remiss to celebrate success. So anytime you hear anything positive, we just ask that you hashtag Yay Red Clay. I think we're looking and living in a space where you can kind of get deflated and overwhelmed by everything that's going on. And we know that our community spirits and most often are being broken. So sometimes we don't take an opportunity to celebrate maybe some of the small things, whether that is internet connectivity or computer or device, or, you know, that grandparent being able to connect with a teacher. Just really looking at celebratory moments. And then the last thing that we're doing, and a big part of our platform, is student voice. Really acknowledging, you know, the social justice and injustice while we're also trying to address remote learning is a big part of what we're continuing to do. So we've had a series, or we're establishing, we've had one already, town hall meetings to really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, race, racism, social injustice, and injustice. Our next one will be October the 1st. And so the last one, it was actually just a video in partnership with the YMCA. We partnered with the Walnut Street and the Western YMCA to really elevate our student voices. You know, our young people are seeing and experiencing things beyond, I would say, anyone's imagination in this current climate, but they are resilient in their efforts and they're engaged. And so we're harnessing that engagement through my Superintendent Student Advisory Council, as well as our equity office, to really engage our students. And we had a very well-run student town hall on the evening of August 30th. I don't know if anyone was able to join, but our students ran a town hall on race and racism in Red Clay. And so we're continuing to engage our students to address those issues that we see, again, playing out in our community. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Vice Chair Gray, I believe she has a question.
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all, you know, for sharing the information. And like I said, y'all are doing a phenomenal job given the challenges that you are faced with to do your job and to do it with the spirit of excellence and at a level of excellence. So thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to Council Member Gray.
I'd like to compliment both of the gentlemen and the fantastic job they're doing to get the kids back into school. And Mr. Green, I want to ask you the same question. Are there households or kids that don't have connectivity still?
Not to our knowledge. Again, we're continuing to engage. It's day 2. And so we're keeping a running record to determine who hasn't been engaged thus far. And what we're actually doing is referring those back to our administrators who are doing cold calls to figure out, you know, it's day 2. We haven't heard from you. Is everything okay? Is it a connectivity issue? Our initial data point was about 400 families. And so we identified those families. Again, one of the interesting things that we also discovered in our effort to reach back out to Comcast, for example, many of them may have started an application to get Comcast Essential in the spring. and they in essence then have to go through Comcast. And so it's how do you bypass a lot of, or maybe the cable might, that the home that they may be in actually has cable in someone else's name. So there's a lot of those little logistical nuances.
The reason I brought that up, and Councilman Guy sort of touched on it, is that City Council has a contract with Comcast.
Mhm.
And possibly we could address or leverage them to provide connectivity to some of the remote homes or homes that don't have it. So that's the reason I was just asking.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. And in our effort to actually connect a lot of the families, we realized that there were barriers that was actually with Comcast through the fact that they had identified that address as either previously having service,
Right.
or, so it wasn't necessarily a funding issue, to Dr. Shelton's point, or it was more a logistical issue of working with
Right.
Comcast to kind of be a barrier buster, to say this family needs it. What can we do to troubleshoot it to ensure that they have the resources that they need? Because
Well, I'm just putting out there, the City Council, if you find out you can't get through Comcast, we may be able to help you.
beautiful. We
But
will
thank
take
you
you up
for all
on
the
it.
hard work.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Councilmember Guy?
Yes, actually, that was the whole main point when I made the comment about we had the money in our capital budget and capital program. We actually had Comcast at the table for dialogue. And so that is something that is certainly worthy to pursue. And the other thing was, it's not about the issue that I was trying to make earlier, wasn't about the money. The issue was about that right now we should be 20 years in with families online, which means one of the biggest problems we're having in Wilmington, it isn't that the kids aren't technologically savvy. A lot of them aren't going to be able to get help from their parents because they didn't grow up in a home with internet access, and they could have. But let me get to my point, and that is I was fortunate enough, I guess in 2008, to be recognized by the Delaware Center for Educational Technology as the top teacher in the Christina School District in implementing technology in the math class. And what I want to ask you, my question is directed toward the teachers. Even though it's a younger group of teachers coming in, what I remember back then is that there were a lot of teachers that didn't necessarily want to join in on the instructional technology movement that was emerging. And so what barriers are you finding, or are there no barriers in having teachers having your teachers up to snuff and trained fast enough? Because I know in online education at the collegiate level, they're having a problem having educators to keep up with the number of students that want to have online education. So can you tell us about what's being done to make sure that your teaching staffs are where they need to be in order to implement this online education, if you will?
That's a very good question, Council Member Guy. And I think one of the things, and you hit the nail on the head, is we really saw that in the spring when we had to transition and pivot to remote learning, the inequity amongst the educators' ability to actually adapt and deliver quality instruction, ensuring that, or knowing that a good percentage of our educators were prepared because they have embraced that digital or instructional component to delivering instruction. So again, we partnered with Dr. Rachel Klein out of the University of Delaware and others to provide ongoing, professional development, and really kind of put an instructional framework process together to make sure, again, that we have adequate professional development, ongoing support for our educators as it relates to those who might not necessarily be as, not even as tech savvy, but how do you actually create and develop lessons that are going to be engaging? It's just not giving them a link to a website, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous learning, teacher-led instruction, or more importantly, providing those avenues. So there still are, inequities amongst our educators and their ability to deliver it. And we're continuing to address it ongoing. And actually one of the resources that I'm holding up right here is improving online teacher education, because again, we know this isn't going anywhere. And the learning curve by which we've all had to embrace in terms of how we input digital tools and evidence-based practices, because a lot of it isn't going online to get a website. To your point, how do you support and create an environment in the home where a student might be raised by a grandparent? And what does that in-home support look like as we provide them with access to Zoom and Schoology and all of the other EduSpeak that we put out to families? How are we holistically ensuring that our teachers have the necessary not only tools but ability to deliver that in a way that's going to reach and meet the varying needs of our students throughout the district? So it is a process that we're continuing to engage and work through.
Follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
My follow-up question has to do with timing. What I've learned as having been a student, online and in class, as an online student, you engage in participating almost, it could be 24 hours a day. You could wake up at 2 in.the morning and want to do some of your schoolwork. And so what I'm wondering is, are there going to be like 24-hour, maybe phone numbers where all the school districts collaborate, where people can call in various subject matters and get assistance 24 hours a day? It would be too costly for one district, but if there was like a hotline, a math hotline, or something of that nature. And also, are you all using college students to any way assist in local neighborhoods and things of that nature? So I'm really talking about what are the outreach lifelines that are going to be important, because I know as a person involved with technology, what allowed me to learn was having friends to call when I ran into a wall who can get you over that hump that you're facing.
So the 24-hour hotline, no, but that's an innovative idea and approach. So I'll make note of that. But with regards to college students, we have tapped into our practicum and student teachers currently who are engaged with our schools to actually provide remote learning supports for a lot of our remote learning sites that we have stood up. So we are using some means of our college students who are either student teachers or practicum students to support remote learning in Red Clay.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Do I have any other hands? Doesn't look like it right now. While I'm looking to see if any other hands are raised, my question to both of you are, what can we do to support, or how can we be of help in terms of some of the challenges that you see that you're confronted with?
For me, the biggest thing was as you go about your respective districts and Councilmember Guy being at large, and as you hear about needs within the community, because again, we have blind spots as much as we're trying to put these supports in place. When our community is in need, they go to those who they trust and who they might be closest to. And so if you hear of a need, first and foremost, just reach out and make us aware so that we can readily address and support that need. But then more importantly, I just appreciate the opportunity to come before council to share what we're doing. And any feedback, again, that you may have to help us or allow us to do a better job is always welcome. And I would just say, hashtag Yay Red Clay, if you hear or see anything positive that's going on to bring a little sunshine and hope to a tough time that we're all dealing with.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. And we will definitely keep that in mind. What percentage do you feel, what percentage of students do you have? Where are the boundaries for Red Clay? I have a good idea regarding Christina. Albert, of course, used to be in the 4th district. Bancroft is in the 4th district. Stubbs is in the 4th district. Those are all Christina
Yep.
schools. Where are Red Clay schools other than Warner in Wilmington?
Warner, Shortledge, Highlands, Lewis, dual language, are so Shortridge Academy, Warner, Highlands Elementary, and then we have Lewis Dual Language Program, which is over by Cool Spring.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like
But
the first and second district,
yeah,
first and second district sounds like it's primarily Red Clay, and fourth, fifth, and sixth sound like it's Christina districts.
and we pull and obviously border, off of Washington, Concord, Market. Obviously, you know how the boundaries are drawn. Lancaster is the dividing line between Christina and Red Clay. Market tends to be the divider
Okay.
between Red Clay and Brandywine.
Okay. 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 All right. Council members, any other questions? Let me write down. I checked to see if we had any questions from the public. So we don't have any questions from the public. I want to know if Mr. Shelton, if you had any ending comments or remarks that you wanted to share.
I just wanted to once again thank you all for inviting us to share. I'd like to echo Superintendent Green's comment that I think the biggest thing as far as supports go is continuing to help people connect with resources. The school districts, we do everything that we can to connect with families, but we know there's a lot of other resources out there. One of the things that became kind of evident when we talk about potential of inequities was these learning pods that are popping up. And originally, what I was hearing was, oh, well, they're popping up with the suburban families, but not here in the city. What we're finding as we're reaching out is a lot of our organizations are creating these learning pods, which is providing access and providing additional supports for our families, and connecting families with those resources is critically important to make sure that we're able to serve all students. And then also just to continue to help us to communicate that everybody's trying to do their best with an ever-changing environment. Some of the rules that have been put in place, put on top of us, make it very difficult for us to meet what some people would like to see us do. And then, quite frankly, there are people that have such dynamically opposite opinions on how we should be approaching this issue. It also makes us hard. I said in one of these open forums, I do about 3 of these a week. I said in one that if we go back to school tomorrow, half my people are going to want me killed. If we don't go to school ever, half my people are going to want me to be killed. And if we do hybrid, everybody's going to be mad at me. So we're sort of in a lose-lose situation, and we're just doing our best based on the science and based on what we know is what's best for kids. We just need everybody to believe that.
Okay. Okay, well, I appreciate your remarks, and we definitely recognize and realize how, you can't please everyone, and you're trying to at least adhere to the CDC recommendations. I would assume, coming from the governor. I've been trying to tune in to Governor Carney's weekly COVID updates. I listened and, kind of heard him talk about what the ideal number needs to be for the state to open up the schools. And based on how they had an uptick in the numbers, it just doesn't sound like we're going to get to that number no time soon, especially with the predictions of it, having this outbreak or uptick, as we're going into the fall, right? So I just applaud you all for what you're doing, and all we can do is just try to support each other. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to know what we could do as council members, being connected with the families and the children that are going to your schools. What it is we can do. So we will definitely let you know. I know we have your website, Christina's website. We have Red Clay's website, and I'm sure you have a place in there where people can just share comments. So that's what we'll do. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Madam
And
Chair?
before we end, I see Council Member McCoy's hand up.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. I was unable to get to the raised hand before you were giving your comment. Just wanted to ask one last question to both gentlemen. One of the things that I consider is because of the fact that the way the city of Wilmington is actually built, there's so many, like pretty much everywhere I go, I can pick up an Xfinity Wi-Fi somewhere on my phone. My phone is automatically connecting somewhere. Wanted to know whether or not we've ever actually asked the question to Comcast on whether or not they'll just give, like, strengthen their Wi-Fi and put a password in the Chromebooks and the iPads as they're handed out to bypass that whole thing of trying to get information into the like trying to get the Wi-Fi into the homes.
So I think the other layer that is DTI, which is the state system too, as you access and leaving devices and things vulnerable as you access material. So a lot of this isn't necessarily like we had an issue yesterday where there was a delay because we use a platform called Securely just to ensure as students are working remotely, someone was Googling suicide, right? We get alerts because obviously it's a district device to protect, but a lot of those platforms were slowing down just by the sheer volume that we're not the only person. Like there's only 3 companies that do that kind of monitoring and support for school districts.
Mhm.
Well, they didn't anticipate, I guess everyone starting remotely yesterday and their servers almost crashed by just the sheer volume.
Oh, wow.
So there are a lot of, bits and pieces and nuances to that tech piece. And so again, I think a lot of times just access is the default, right? We should ensure that everyone has as strong of an access point as they can. And that's, again, another reason why we're deploying the tech bus and really working with Nerd It Now and other partners to ensure that there isn't any delay beyond Wi-Fi or broadband access. So if we know you have a computer and you have access, then what's the engagement and how can we support you in the engagement? Again, I think to Councilman Guy's point, where a lot of the students may have it, but the parents may not necessarily be as tech savvy. So there's so many layers to it, but that, again, I think that's something that we'll continue to investigate. And we're monitoring the bandwidth, the connection on a daily basis, and those are running numbers. And so when we see a drop off or decline, those are things that, again, we can readily get back to try to pinpoint and figure out what the real issues are.
Thank you for bringing more clarity to that, because I always wondered that. I'm like, isn't there an easier way?
Well, like even last year we tried because, again, you can come to one of our schools and the guest net will pop up. And so one of our plans or goals in working with the county through COVID was to expand it to the broader community. So if you live within the boundary of that school, you could access it, but because it's a state network and then it allows it to be vulnerable, not sure whose devices will patch into that network becomes an issue relative to a school.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So if no other questions, again, I want to thank both of you for sharing that information. And we will definitely reach out to you if we have any questions or if we have any information that we need to share with you. So at this time, I would like to accept a motion to adjourn this session of our Education, Youth, and Family Committee meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn this committee meeting.
Second, somebody? Okay. Linda?
Hear me?
Oh, no, I couldn't hear you.
I gave you a second. I made a motion and then I gave a second. So.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or not voting? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a good
evening. Thanks for
Thank you
your
very much.
advocacy.
Have a great night.
Okay, bye.